Hey everyone, this is Hannah Mail. We are going to go over some more objects, but first we're going to start with a map of Egypt just to give you a sense of the geography. Um, so on the right, you see a map of Egypt here and some of the particularly important pharaonic sites. So because of the way that the Nile runs, Lower Egypt is actually up here on the map, and that's where the delta is. So that's where a lot of the old kingdom, particularly royal remains and royal sites are. And it's where the capital for the old kingdom, and then to some extent all the way through the new kingdom was as well, in Memphis here. And it's within Lower Egypt and this delta region that modern day Cairo is as well. And then when we get down to this part of the map, we're in actually Upper Egypt, and this is the more deserty region, and it's where a lot of the particularly royal New Kingdom sites are. So the first museum that we're looking at in terms of objects is the Petrie Museum of Archaeology. So most of these images are taken from Wiki Commons. That's where I found the objects and the images as well. So this is a stele from the New Kingdom, but it's in a little bit of an unusual shape. So it's modeled after the New Kingdom temple towers or temple walls. So that's what these are meant to represent here. And this stele or object is to the god Ptah. So you see him here. And it was probably a woman who dedicated this or had this made, because you see her there that she's doing offerings or doing homage in some way to the god Ptah. So you see in these hieroglyphs here, you see the offering formula. So that what looks like a pyramid, and then a plant object, and then this set of hieroglyphs here. And this is a common formula that you will see on stele, pretty much definitely from the Middle Kingdom on, but you also see it in, I think, some old kingdom objects as well. So this is just a close-up view of this side of the object here. This is another piece of, or another object from the Petrie Museum. This is once formed part of a full stele, so this is just a piece of it, so it's a fragment. And this is a husband and wife, so you have the husband in front here, and then his wife here. So again, this is probably made for a couple not super high in the socioeconomic scale. So in this set of hieroglyphs here, those are the ones that are talking about the wife and giving her name and title. So you know that it's this guy's wife because of these hieroglyphs here. So this reads his wife, and then it gives her title, lady or mistress of the house. That lady or mistress of the house is a common title you'll see for women on a lot of Egyptian objects from even the Old Kingdom on. And then this gives her name here. So Ayin Uset. And then this set of hieroglyphs tells you a little bit more about the husband here. So it gives his name, so Ha Emi, and then it also gives his title, so accountant of cattle. This is another stele, another husband or more family stele from the Petrie Museum. So you have the husband and wife here, and then you have a woman that's doing offerings to them in front of the offering table here. This is probably their daughter, but I'm still fully learning hieroglyphs myself, so I don't know for sure what her relationship to this couple fully is. This is another stele, but it's from the museum in Alexandria, but it's one of the more fancier ones. So this couple or family or couple that commissioned this, and it was probably the husband, was higher up on the social economic scale. So this is from the museum in Alexandria, and you see that offering formula on both registers again here that you saw in the other object. You see the husband and wife couple here, and then their two sons that are in front of the offering table that are bringing their parents food and drink. And when I clicked on the further information for this object, it told me that it was originally found in or at the site of Abydos. So Abydos first came to prominence as a site during the early dynastic period. That's where we find a lot of the early tombs of Egypt's early monarchs. And then in the Middle Kingdom, one of those early dynastic tombs became associated and was thought to be the tomb of Osiris, who was the god of the dead. And so Abydos in the Middle Kingdom and after becomes a place of pilgrimage for Egyptians from different socioeconomic walks of life. And stelae are set up there, and a cemetery for non-royal Egyptians grows up there as well. So this stele was found within one of those Middle Kingdom cemeteries at Abydos, and somewhere in the text it also talks about the mortuary temple of Mentuhotep II. And a mortuary temple was a temple where offerings were brought to the deceased spirit of Egypt's monarchs. So the husband may have been, an official within that mortuary temple or something like that in life, but I'm not 100% sure about that. This is another stele. This is from the Middle Kingdom, and it's from the Hermitage in Russia. So you see right on the sort of first front part here, this is the sort of stock part of the formula. So this is what you see repeated over and over on formulae. And so you see that offering formula here. So an implied and offering that the king gives an implied to Osiris for, I think this is the foremost part of the Westerners. And then I think this is the great god of Abydos part here. And so then when you get down here, and definitely when you're starting to get down here, this is the part where they actually personalize the stele and put in the name of the person or persons that commissioned this and actually paid for it. So this is in a lot of these stele, it's these chunks that you find out the actual biographical info of a lot of these people that are connected with these objects. And so in this case, you have probably the person who commissioned the stele. So Pepi, who probably is deceased, or maybe its wife. It was his wife that commissioned it for him. And so he's in front of an offering table here. And so within this chunk, it gives his name and it also gives his title. So that's where we get that he's chief of the otters. And then when you get to this chunk down here, this is his wife, and she's his wife because of this chunk of hieroglyphs here. So his wife, lady or mistress of the house, and then you have her name here. And then in these chunks, it gives you some of the couple's children, particularly their daughters. And so that's what I've zoomed in on for these next few slides. So this is the zoomed in part here. So another woman that's somehow connected with this household. So that's that lady or mistress of the house, Thai mat. And then this chunk here is, I'm zooming in on this part here. So this is where we get daughters. It's not clear to me whether they're her daughters or just daughters that are associated with the household, but they're almost certainly, at the very least, Pepe's daughters. So, because it says his daughter, and then his daughter again. And so then it gives these two women's names, Isuri and Hetessa. I don't know my hieroglyphs well enough yet to tell you for sure which register has the name Isuri and which register has the name Hetessa. I think this register is Hetessa because I think that capital H is in fact a dotted H, which is that hieroglyph. But again, that part I don't know for sure. I just know for sure that this chunk of hieroglyphs and this chunk of hieroglyphs here both say his daughter. So that's how I know that this is the general hieroglyphic chunk, but the details I'm a little bit unsure about. And then I've already pointed out, so on the other slide, this is a close-up here of this chunk and then this chunk here. So this chunk actually talks about two family relationships because it mentions his wife and then his daughter again. So maybe this is referring to the same woman, maybe two different women. I'm just not sure. Because this chunk is talking about the wife part. So his wife, lady or mistress of the house, Happy, and then his daughter or his. So this from here to here is his beloved daughter part. But they basically say the pronoun his twice. So that's why you see these two F's. So technically, when you read the hieroglyphs, it's actually read as his or his daughter, his beloved, and then it gives her name, so Iti, and then the justified. So she's either living or has lived a good life. These are some other objects from the Louvre that we're going to go on and explore in detail a little bit later, but these are some of those Wiki Commons links. So these are some of those objects from the Louvre that we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail. So this is another stele example from the New Kingdom as well, because Amenhotep IV changed his name to Akhenaten, and he was a New Kingdom monarch. So this is a stele that actually shows a family worshiping a deity. So the deity is, I think, one of the bull deities. So you see that up here, and then you see the family in kind of that worship or adoration pose there. This is another object from the Louvre. This is another stele. This is a family stele. So you have the husband, the carpenter in Manai, who probably commissioned this and at the very least probably paid for it. So you see him here, and then you see his wife, and then some of their family members, including I think some of their kids, are in these further registers down below. So the original context of this object was probably from Abydos. So I talked about in the last slide how during the Middle Kingdom, Abydos became a place of pilgrimage for families and individuals because it was thought that the tomb of Osiris was there. And so what families would do is they would build these small private chapels close to temples at these sites. And in the Middle Kingdom, a temple was built to Osiris, and they would set up these stele lays there. So even if they couldn't do the pilgrimage in person, they could at least do the pilgrimage in spirit. But sometimes they would also set up these stele as sort of a commemorative record of they actually did make the pilgrimage to Abydos in person. And so this is an example of kind of that context. And so you know that this is this gentleman's wife because you see that those same set of hieroglyphics that we saw in the previous objects, so that his, and really it's that same thing of his beloved wife. So you see that F, which is that pronoun his twice. So his wife, his beloved. And then her name, I think that's her name here. And then these are some of these couple's kids. So it looks like a son and a daughter, judging by the images and the hieroglyphics. And I think we're going to key in on that a little bit as well. I think this is the same couple as or that you see up here. But I'm not 100% sure. But that is a common thing that you'll find on stele, like, is you'll find the same people or the same couple, but they just appear in multiple scenes within that object. And then there's further people here. So this is just a close-up of the wife's hieroglyphs. So this chunk here. And then if you look on some parts of the stele, you'll see that offering formula that we've seen before as well. So you see it here. You see it here. And then this is some of the actual objects and goods that this family hopes to receive in the afterlife. So that's what these hieroglyphics are there. So this is just a close-up overall stele of the sun. So this chunk here. So you see his son, his beloved, and then this son's name. And then the next one is a close-up of the daughter. So you see her here. So it's a close-up of this chunk here. So it's the same formula of his daughter, his beloved. I'm not fully sure what that other F is doing there. And then I think this is her name here. This is another example also from the Louvre of one of these family stele to Osiris that was probably originally put or set up at Abydos. And so we have the husband and wife. So basically the nuclear family, so the husband and wife with at least some of their kids here. Judging by the way that they're depicting these kids, these I think are their kids, but they're so they've grown up and they're adult, whereas this might be one of their children that's not yet fully grown, because it looks like she or he has the finger in the mouth, which we've talked about is one of the sort of iconographic signs that this is someone that's an adolescent or not full grown yet. And then this register is more of their sort of extended family and kin that also hope to sort of share in these afterlife benefits as well and get the benefits from having even this spiritual pilgrimage to Abydos. And then this is the actual text that has probably the offering formula and maybe a little more of the biographical details of some of these persons here. And so these hieroglyphs really just give you probably their names. And so part of this hieroglyph, or part of these hieroglyphs here, is actually a hymn to Osiris. So that's what I've put on these slides. So that is what this is talking about here. So these hieroglyphs, or this hymn, is part of what it actually says on this part. And then we have another stele that is also a husband and wife, and they are worshiping Osiris and Isis. And this is from the Louvre as well. This is also from the Louvre. This is another worship stele. This is either from the third intermediate period or later, and this is or was dedicated or set up by a woman, because you see her here. And so these hieroglyphs on top give her name. So Lady Nest are writ, and she's being led by the god Thoth to the god Atum. This is another stele from the Louvre from Deir al Medina. This is to the deity Mir Es-Sagur. So you see that deity here. And this was probably also dedicated by a woman, because that is who's doing the adoring. And so these hieroglyphs up here give her name, so Tar Anu, and it gives her title. It also gives the name of another person here, Mary Ari, and then it gives the name of probably one of these women's sons, so Neferhetep. And just because the hieroglyphs are kind of faded, these two people are, so Merari and Neferhetep are probably labeled somewhere down here, because it would make more sense just in terms of hieroglyphic conventions for the most important person on the stele, which would be Tar Hakanu. So that's who's depicted here. For the hieroglyphs labeling her to really be right above her here. This is another stele from Abydos as well, from the Louvre, that also is a little bit differently shaped than you usually see. So this is I think it's a husband and wife that are receiving an offering. But I'm not fully sure, because this is either the same couple or it's a different couple that are giving offerings to this second couple here. But this is that offering formula that you see on a lot of these stele and that we've seen in other slides as well. This is from the Louvre as well. And this is a limestone stele, so that's what this full object is. So this, I think, was at 1.1 stele, and it's broken apart now into these 3 pieces. And so this comes probably originally from Abydos and from one of those private family chapels that was set up. I don't know if this statue is the husband of this family, and it's included within this family group, or just because the way that the museum decides to do this exhibit. They put this stele up, and then this statue is talking about a totally different thing. But the main piece that we're looking at is what's behind him here. And so on this stele, it gives the sort of male head of the household's name, so De Jetute, and then different members of his family as well. This is a type of object and a type of statue that we see in the New Kingdom a lot. So we have these family or pair statues. So the husband and wife with their kid or kids. And these could be used in a couple different contexts. So this could either be what's called a ka statue. So a statue or set of statues that was put in the tomb as sort of a backup vessel for your spirit or your body to receive offerings and be able to take them in if something happened to your mummy. And in that case, it would only be seen by the deceased. It wouldn't really be seen by the living. Or this statue could originally have been in the tomb chapel of this family. And in that case, it would have been seen by the living because the tomb chapel for both non-royal and royal people was where the living came to give those offerings of food and drink. And according to the more information tab on this piece, it was probably originally in Thebes. So it was within one of those Theban necropolises. So it gives the husband's name, so Sher Re, and it gives the fact that he's a scribe, so probably on there. And then it gives or it depicts his wife. So her name is probably somewhere in these hieroglyphs, and then their son. And then if you look here, you can just make out that offering formula, or at least part of it that we've seen before. I think I'm going to do this last object, and then I'm going to stop and maybe do another video as well. So this is another another one of these pair statues that was in this case, we know, or at least Egyptologists are pretty sure that this was originally a Ka statue. So this was originally in the tomb of probably the husband, because it was probably originally the husband's tomb in Thebes. So you see him here. And then when his wife died, she was buried with him as well. And so this again, in these hieroglyphs, you get both their titles and their names. So you see that his wife again, and then that mistress or lady of the house title that we've seen before for the wife as well. So I'm going to stop, or I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and hopefully I will see you all later on.